As framed as a casual activity as video games are, challenge is really the cornerstone of what makes them worth playing at all. If you can't lose, what's the point of even playing? There's no tension, no drama, and when things come to a dramatic close at the end of a really tough battle that you just hardly scraped your way through. Oh my god. This relationship does create a sort of trust between the player and the game designer, though, that they're going to be fair about their challenge and it's going to be gradual. As you get better, the game gets harder, so on and so forth. It's a healthy relationship, right? Not in Earthbound Zero. This game's full of classic NES-era BS. Plenty of the battles, if not attacked in the right way, are just super ridiculously hard. Early game enemies can kill you pretty easily. Late game enemies can kill you even more easily. This game has balancing issues, and I think that's deterred a lot of people from wanting to play it because they've heard it's grindy or annoying, etc. I guess at least there is a pretty standard metric to measure your growth by, the levels. But spending 15 minutes while the game is sped up in the middle of Magic Hint, just going back and forth, running away from the proper swoosh enemy so that you can get a bunch of experience, it's not fun. You gotta remember this was before the instant kill system that was actually designed by Shigeru Miyamoto, which makes sense. He didn't like grinding in RPGs. This was before that. This is when you just had to sit down and spend an hour or two a day just grinding and doing nothing, maybe listening to something in the background. But at the end of the day, that doesn't make it fun. That's what Earthbound system does of the instant kill system. That makes it fun. That makes you feel genuinely stronger. Then, lo and behold, the Easy Ring is introduced. This is a piece of equipment that was modded into the game to make the game more approachable to beginners when the English ROM was leaked on the internet so many years ago at this point. At its bare bones, it gives you more experience from battle so that you're leveling up more frequently and you can kind of keep up with the game's growing pace. Or storm, depending on how you want to look at it. And I'm gonna be honest, I think this might be the best way to experience the first Earthbound game. Sure, you could say it makes the game, quote, easier, but at the end of the day, there's just less grinding is the major thing that's different. It cuts out the detrimental pace killer that grinding was in the original game. In Earthbound, when Paula is introduced to the party, you're introduced to her by having this area of crows that you can just grind on. Then you have this mole that when you beat him, Paula will gain like 5 or 6 levels, and she's already almost caught up with Ness. With Jeff, he has his own whole individual section where he's given a chance to fight enemies that more so match his strength for the most part. In Mother 1, it's like, oh, Lloyd joined the party? Okay, stop everything you're doing and go buy him all the proper equipment that cost a bunch of money that you have to grind for anyway, and get him somewhere in the realm of Nintendo's level so that the game is still playable. It makes getting new characters feel like a chore rather than an exciting new way to play the game. I think the Easy Ring's biggest problem is that it suffers from bad name-itis, much like that term. There's a real stigma towards lowering a game's difficulty for some reason, and some games even go as far as to patronize you for it. Look, I'm a proponent for challenging games, okay? It's what makes you ultimately feel good about being able to finish something. But I don't think there's anything wrong at the same time with letting the player feel like they win here and there. After I completed my initial playthrough of Earthbound Beginnings, I wanted to replay through it with the Easy Ring so I could gather my thoughts before I made my thoughts on video about it. And I'll tell you, playing it with the Easy Ring made the game much more enjoyable. It cut down my total playtime for that playthrough probably 2.5 hours, and even made Gygas 5% more possible. It makes Anna and especially Lloyd feel like actual valued members of the team. And damn, I can't iterate this enough. Teddy is the best in the game, baby! Dude's sword can cut through anything. He's the only cool guy with a katana. I haven't even touched on how this improves just the overall feel of the overworld yet. Because the later battles are so challenging, the encounter rate is incredibly high. And this makes sense. You have more battles, you'll have more experience, you'll be more ready. But again, it's a killer to the pacing. It makes it feel like it takes forever to get anywhere in this pretty relatively small map. The Easy Ring fixes this. Since it gives you double money and XP, it gives you half the battles. Now, I know in the past I've been very much a stickler about artistic integrity and how I'm not huge on the altercation of someone's artistic vision. However, I feel differently about this because the balancing issues didn't come from that being the way a toy wanted people to experience the game. It came from eventually the game being rushed. It came from a constraint rather than that being his vision. But I'm not going to be coy. Earthbound's also a pretty tough game that also has some BS in it. But there is a sizable difference between the difficulty between this game and this game. Oh, don't want to pay the Nintendo Switch Online fee or buy a Switch to play this game legally? Here you go. This is the game. This is what you're going to see. I do think the amount of defense it gives you is a bit extreme. In fact, it matches the Goddess Bracelet, which you don't get until Magicant. But at the same time, that's still fairly early game. That's still in the first hour and a half or so. Not to mention it makes the zoo section immensely more possible. But you also can't equip any other rings without taking this one off. So you can give up the easy ring for better equipment, or keep the easy ring and its benefits, but have to stick with its eventually obsolete defense stat. At the end of the day, you're not going to get the perfect experience either way, but at least this one makes the game fun. I think the extreme difficulties of certain points in this game were much more acceptable in their time, because back then, developers would just put in a bunch of BS to make their games last longer. Lastability was an issue even then. And the way to remedy this at the time was to just make a bunch of the enemies super difficult. Make enemies spawn super high. Make the best items really expensive. This isn't necessarily a critique, I'm just trying to give you an understanding of what the conventions of the time were. At the end of the day, just change the name of this ring. Call it the balance ring or something so that people don't have to feel so embarrassed about having to use it. Look, the game's perfectly playable and even beatable without it. But if you're not a freak like me who wants to play every Mother game 100 times, I could understand many casual players being very turned off by this experience. And if you like the more challenging vanilla game, that's perfectly understandable too. That's the final product we got. That is undoubtedly the most authentic experience you could have with it. Now, while Mother 3 is undoubtedly the most balanced game in the series, this one seems to swing a little hard in the other direction, but at least it swings at all. There are many games like Mario or Sonic or Kirby or something where you know the experience is very much tailored to what you're playing. There's one difficulty, and that difficulty is pretty consistent throughout the entire series. With Earthbound, you never know what you're gonna get. Everything's different. And there's nothing wrong with liking the one you like best the most. But I do think it's important to acknowledge they all offer very different experiences. If you love Mother 3 for its very well-developed story, very realized battle system, and emotional depth, that is perfectly reasonable. If you like Earthbound best because of its pretty lighthearted and funny tone, multitude of landscapes, and sentimentality, that makes perfect sense too. But at the end of the day, you're all wrong. This one's the best. This one has Teddy.
Oh, Teddy, baby.